Then I had a bunch of other motherfuckers in my swallow before that, bro. You heard me? Future, Guided, Khaled, Ross sit up underneath forever, stalking my style and peeping my sauce. You heard me? But there's a lot of niggas, yo guy, all these dudes come up under my umbrella.
Day to be a boss in the motherfucking business, aka the #1 stunner. It's going down. Luke Belair toast to all the hustlers. We about 30 minutes out from the cyber truck pulling up. That's cool.
Some reason I think them niggas don't really fuck with the boy, but I don't give a fuck. I don't personally give a fuck. They got their little crew, I got mine, so it is what it is.
How you feel about Birdman saying Rick Ross stole his
Man,
style?
I don't give a fuck. Yo. Rick Ross is really a real boss, bro. I'm gonna put it like that. I don't know. I never been around Birdman or nothing like that. And I know he do his thing. I seen the conflict with him and with Wayne and shit like that. I don't know all that, and I know Ross. Ross is a real boss.
When motherfuckers be bringing up the correctional shit, I'll be like, I don't even give a fuck.
A homie right now, shout out to he a lawyer. He went to college. He went to ASU. You got dudes come from the trenches that's lawyers. They could be from the land, and they could be, I ain't gonna say from the set or something like that.
But if Rick Ross was a lawyer, I don't think it would be the same blowback that he got for being a correctional officer.
When you and Birdman and Khaled even was just like cool and real close, like what was their relationship like then?
You know, it was just, at the end of the day, man, it was just all about, you know, the love I showed and, you know, everything I gave homie. It was just out of respect.
Right.
You know, me paying homage to OGs, you know, and all I would have wanted in exchange is maybe them small, them conversations of wisdom, just that little game. You know, that's the only thing really, you know, I wouldn't charge them, you know, because I got so much game coming up. And I thought that's how it's supposed to went. But, you know, just seeing the way, not just Lil Weezy, but my closest homie got
Khaled.
dealt with. You feel me? I just felt it one right. You know what I'm saying? Khaled is a great dude. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, so anybody else, man, you know, you just got to fix that. Just fix it.
It started with a shaky video and 1,000 opinions. Out of nowhere, a short clip began circulating online. Blurry, loud, chaotic. It looked like Rick Ross and Birdman were in the same space. And things didn't look friendly. Within minutes, blogs were posting it. Twitter, now X, was exploding. Instagram comment sections turned into full-blown debates. Some fans swore it was old footage. Others said this was the moment years of tension finally boiled over. Was it a real confrontation? Was it staged? Or was it just another spark lighting up an old fire that never really went out? Because here's the truth. This tension didn't start yesterday. This isn't random drama between two rappers chasing headlines. This goes back over a decade. Back to loyalty, money, contracts, and a father-son fallout that shook the entire rap industry. At one point, Ross and Birdman weren't enemies. They were collaborators, brothers in business, Southern bosses building empires side by side. They dropped music together, praised each other in interviews, moved like allies. So how did we get from respect to resentment? How did admiration turn into diss records? And why does every new clip, every new rumor instantly reopen those old wounds? To understand that viral moment, you have to rewind the tape, way back, before the lawsuits, before put some respect on my name, before idols become rivals, because what you're seeing now is just the latest chapter in a story that never really ended. Before the diss tracks, before the interviews, before the tension, there was real respect. Back in the late 2000s, Rick Ross and Birdman weren't rivals. They were aligned. Two Southern bosses who understood hustle, with loyalty and expansion. Birdman had already built Cash Money Records into a powerhouse. He helped shape the careers of artists who would define an era. His image wasn't just rapper, it was mogul, executive, kingpin of his own empire. Meanwhile, Ross was rising fast. After exploding onto the scene in 2006, he built Maybach Music Group and started crafting his own dynasty. Luxury rap, business talk, ownership energy. On paper, they were similar. Both positioned themselves as bosses. Both preached financial independence. Both represented Southern dominance. In 2008, they even recorded a joint project called The H. It wasn't just music, it was a statement. Flashy cars, big money, brotherhood vibes. When it officially dropped in 2013, it reminded fans that these two once moved in sync. Ross openly praised Birdman in interviews, not calling him someone he learned from. Birdman returned the love, saying Ross had boss mentality. There was no tension in the air, just mutual benefit. But relationships in this industry don't break overnight. They crack slowly. And the first real fracture didn't start between Ross and Birdman at all. It started with someone Birdman called his son. And when that bond broke, everything changed. The real crack in the foundation didn't start with Rick Ross. It started with Lil Wayne. For years, Wayne and Birdman weren't just business partners, they were family. Birdman discovered Wayne when he was a kid in New Orleans and signed him to Cash Money Records in the early 1990s. Wayne grew up inside that label. He called Birdman Daddy. Birdman called Wayne his son. They built an empire together. Wayne became one of the biggest rappers alive in the 2000s. Multi-platinum albums, Grammy wins, a cultural takeover. Cash Money was thriving. Then December 2014 happened. Wayne went to Twitter and shocked the world. He said he felt like a prisoner at Cash Money. He accused Birdman of holding back the Carter 5. He claimed he wasn't being paid what he was owed. That wasn't a small complaint. That was a public fracture. By January 2015, Wayne filed a $51 million lawsuit against Birdman and Cash Money, alleging unpaid advances and breach of contract. The numbers were massive. The headlines were louder. This wasn't just label tension. This was father versus son. Family turned courtroom battle. Fans were stunned. Industry insiders started whispering. Producers and artists who had quietly complained about Cash Money's payment reputation suddenly had a spotlight on the issue. And that's when Rick Ross started watching differently. Because from Ross's perspective, this wasn't just business. This was someone he respected being blocked from releasing music. And when that happens in hip-hop, people start choosing sides. Ross didn't stay neutral. And once he stepped in, the friendship with Birdman would never be the same again. Up until this point, Rick Ross had stayed mostly quiet. He wasn't tweeting, he wasn't throwing obvious shots, he was watching. But when the lawsuit between Lil Wayne and Birdman went public, something shifted. Ross respected Wayne, heavy. Wayne wasn't just another rapper in the South, he was one of the architects of the modern era. And seeing him publicly claim he was being held back didn't sit right with him, especially when the conversation was about money and ownership. Then came the moment that made things official. A fan suggested online that Wayne should leave Cash Money and sign to Maybach Music Group. Instead of ignoring it, Ross retweeted the idea with a bold caption, "Get Birdman on the phone." That wasn't random. That was pressure. Ross was signaling that if Birdman couldn't handle the situation, he would. And in hip-hop, that kind of public stance is personal. From Birdman's perspective, this was betrayal. The man he once worked with was now amplifying his family dispute. Instead of staying out of it, Ross stepped directly into the fire. And it didn't stop there. Ross began referencing the situation in interviews, subtle comments, slight jabs, amid then more direct commentary about artists not getting paid properly. The tension was no longer behind the scenes, it was public. And once the public sees friction between two bosses, the conversation escalates fast. But Ross wasn't finished making his point, because the next move wouldn't be a tweet. It would be a record, and that record would change everything. When Rick Ross finally addressed everything directly, he didn't do it in an interview, he did it on wax. In March 2017, Ross dropped Rather You Than Me. Buried inside that album was a track that immediately stopped the industry in its tracks. Idols become rivals. This wasn't a playful diss. It wasn't subliminal, it wasn't vague, it was personal. Ross framed the record as disappointment. He spoke about admiring Birdman from a distance, learning from him, respecting how he built Cash Money Records into a powerhouse. Then he flipped the narrative. He accused Birdman of mismanaging artists' money, of living lavishly while Wayne was fighting for his release, of not honoring the loyalty that built the empire in the first place. One line stood out heavy, Ross praying that Birdman would find love in his heart for Wayne. That wasn't disrespect. That was accusation layered in emotion. Ross wasn't attacking Birdman's street credibility. He was questioning his morals, his leadership, his legacy. And in hip-hop, challenging a man's business integrity hits deeper than questioning his bars. The track went viral instantly. Fans debated it. Artists listened quietly. Industry insiders understood the message loud and clear. Birdman had been publicly called out, not by a random critic, but by someone he once worked with closely. And here's what made it worse. Ross didn't sound angry. He sounded hurt, which made the betrayal angle even louder. From that moment on, there was no pretending the tension was imaginary. The line had been drawn. And Birdman wasn't going to stay silent forever. After Idols Become Rivals dropped, the industry waited. Would Birdman respond on a record? Would he clap back in an interview? Would he ignore it? What happened next didn't just respond to the tension. It became one of the most viral moments in hip-hop history. In April 2016, Birdman pulled up to the Breakfast Club and delivered what might be the shortest but loudest interview ever. He walked in serious, barely smiled, and immediately demanded one thing: put some respect on my name. The room went quiet. No jokes, no laughter, just tension. He didn't mention Rick Ross directly in that interview, but everyone knew the timing wasn't random. Ross had been vocal. The industry had been questioning Cash Money's reputation. Birdman felt the pressure. The clip exploded online. Memes flooded the internet. The phrase became cultural currency overnight. And Ross, he didn't miss the opportunity. In one of the smoothest trolling moves of the entire saga, Ross sent bottles of his Bel Air Rosé champagne to the Breakfast Club hosts, especially to Charlemagne. It wasn't loud, it was calculated. Ross basically turned Birdman's serious demand for respect into a marketing moment for his own brand. That move said everything without saying much at all. This is where the feud shifted from emotional to strategic. Birdman moved with intensity. Ross moved with composure. Two different leadership styles, two different approaches to conflict, and the public loved it. But behind the viral jokes and memes, the tension wasn't funny, because Birdman wasn't built for internet antics. And when he finally addressed it head-on, the tone got darker. Memes were flying, clips were trending, fans were laughing. But Birdman wasn't amused. A few months after the Breakfast Club moment and the heat from Idols Become Rivals, Birdman went live on Instagram. And this time, there was no studio setup. No polished interview, just raw emotion. For nearly 10 minutes, he vented. He called out critics, he dismissed bloggers, he referred to people throwing shots at him as little bitty individuals trying to stay relevant. Then came the line that made everyone pause. Oh, you don't want to see no murder. He didn't mention Rick Ross by name, but the timing made it obvious who the energy was aimed toward. This wasn't lyrical sparring. This was Birdman reminding people that he doesn't handle disrespect through social media debates. He's from a different era, a different code. He made it clear he wasn't into diss tracks or internet back and forth. From his perspective, Ross crossed a line by stepping into what he considered family business between him and Lil Wayne. Ross, of course, responded, but in his own style. Instead of matching aggression with aggression, Ross posted a calm video from a tropical setting, palm trees behind him. Relaxed tone, controlled words. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten. He said one thing that cut straight through the noise: pay Wayne his money. That was the core of Ross's stance. No theatrics, no intimidation, just accountability. At that point, the feud became more than personal. It became philosophical. Birdman represented loyalty, hierarchy, and old-school authority. Ross represented ownership, transparency, and business clarity. Two bosses, two mindsets, and neither one was backing down. But while they were locked in tension publicly, something unexpected was happening behind the scenes that would shift the entire narrative. While Rick Ross and Birdman were trading subtle shots, the real war was happening in court. And this wasn't small talk. This was $51 million on the line. Back in early 2015, Lil Wayne officially sued Birdman and Cash Money Records. The claim: breach of contract, unpaid advances, and most importantly, the delay of Thaw Carter 5. Wayne said he felt like a prisoner in his own label. Imagine that. One of the biggest rappers alive, stuck. Fans had been waiting for Carter V for years. It was announced, teased, delayed, teased again, then silence. Meanwhile, rumors kept spreading that the album was finished but being held back over money disputes. The lawsuit made everything public. Wayne demanded to be released from his contract. He wanted full ownership of his music, and he wanted what he believed he was owed. That move shook the industry. For the first time, the untouchable Cash Money empire looked vulnerable. Blogs dissected contracts, artists started whispering about royalties and back-end splits. The loyalty over paperwork era was fading fast. Behind the scenes, the tension was intense. Yeah, reports suggested Wayne and Birdman were still working in studios next to each other, barely speaking. Two men who once called each other father and son, now passing in silence. It wasn't just business anymore. It was heartbreak. Then, after nearly 4 years of legal battles, something shifted. In June 2018, the lawsuit was settled. The details stayed private, but insiders reported Wayne walked away with over $10 million. And, more importantly, ownership of Thaw Carter V. The album finally dropped in September 2018 and debuted at #1. Wayne was free. And in that moment, Rick Ross looked vindicated. Everything he had been criticizing, it suddenly made sense. But here's the twist. While Wayne and Birdman slowly found peace, Ross wasn't part of that reconciliation. And that's where the story takes another unexpected turn. Emma, when the lawsuit ended, a lot of people thought the entire saga was finally over. Lil Wayne got his freedom, the Carter VID dropped and went #1. Fans celebrated, and then came the moment nobody expected. In August 2018, at Lil Louisiana Fest in New Orleans, Birdman walked on stage and publicly embraced Lil Wayne. He called him the greatest. Wayne smiled. The crowd went crazy. It looked like forgiveness. It felt like closure. But here's what people missed. That reunion didn't include Rick Ross. Wayne and Birdman repaired their bond. Ross stayed on the outside. And that's where the tension quietly shifted. From Birdman's perspective, Wayne was family, blood ties, history, 2 decades of building an empire together. Family disagreements can be ugly, but they can also be repaired. Ross, he was different. But Birdman has said more than once that he felt Ross inserted himself into something that wasn't his place. In his eyes, Ross stepped into private business and made it public. That wasn't loyalty, that was betrayal. Meanwhile, Ross likely feels justified. Everything he criticized ended up being validated. Wayne got paid, Wayne got control, Wayne left cash money. The exact outcomes Ross had been pushing for. So while Wayne and Birdman found peace, Ross and Birdman never truly reset. The respect never fully came back. The tension never fully cooled. And that's why years later, whenever interviews happen, podcasts drop, or old clips resurface, this story keeps coming back. Because this wasn't just about money, it was about pride. And pride doesn't settle as easily as lawsuits do. But then, in 2022, Birdman said something that reopened the wound all over again. Just when people thought time had cooled everything off, a new spark hit. In 2022, Birdman sat down on a podcast and finally spoke openly about how he really felt about Rick Ross. And this time, he didn't sound confused, he sounded offended. Birdman claimed Ross had studied him, watched how he built cash money, learned how he structured deals, how he branded artists, how he turned loyalty into a movement, then took that blueprint and flipped it into Maybach Music Group. In Birdman's eyes, Ross didn't just criticize him, he used his formula, then turned against him. That's a different kind of betrayal. It wasn't about Wayne anymore, it wasn't about unpaid advances, it was about legacy. Birdman built cash money from nothing in the early 1990s. By the early 2000s, the label had sold over 50 million records worldwide. He saw himself as a pioneer, someone who showed Southern artists how to own their sound and dominate the industry. So when Ross publicly questioned his integrity, Birdman didn't just see it as disrespect, he saw it as a student attacking a teacher. Ross, of course, would argue something different. He built Maybach Music Group in 2009 and signed artists like Meek Mill and Whale. He positioned himself as a boss who valued transparency and ownership. From his perspective, he wasn't copying Birdman. He was improving on what he saw. 2 men, 2 versions of the same story, and neither one backing down. That interview didn't create new drama. It reminded people the old drama never died. Because beneath all the lawsuits and reconciliations, one question still lingers. Was this ever about Wayne, or was it always about power? Years passed, albums dropped, businesses expanded, but the tension, it never really disappeared. Even after Lil Wayne and Birdman made peace, the distance between Birdman and Rick Ross stayed the same. No public sit-down, no handshake moment. No "it's all love now" headline. And in hip-hop, silence can be louder than diss tracks. Every time Ross drops a new interview, fans revisit idols become rivals. Every time Birdman talks business, someone brings up the Wayne lawsuit. The internet refuses to let it fade. Then in 2024, when Ross got into public tension with Drake, who comes directly from the Young Money and Cash Money tree, fans immediately connected the dots again. Suddenly, the old history felt fresh. Comment sections filled up with reminders of the past. This is what makes the story powerful. It's not just beef, it's legacy. Birdman represents the blueprint of Southern label dominance in the 1990s and 2000s. He built an empire that reportedly generated millions in revenue. He survived industry shifts that wiped others out. Ross represents the next evolution. The artist who watched the moguls, learned from them, then built his own brand with ownership at the center. One built the system, the other challenged parts of it. Neither one folded. And that's why this feud feels bigger than two rappers arguing. It's a clash of philosophies. Old school hierarchy versus modern transparency. Street code versus public accountability. Family loyalty versus business fairness. And here's the wild part. Neither man lost. Birdman is still a mogul. Ross is still a boss. But some wounds don't close just because time passes. They just wait for the next clip to go viral. At some point, this stopped being about diss records. It became about identity. For Birdman, the issue isn't just what was said, it's who said it. He once viewed Rick Ross as someone close, someone who learned from him, someone who benefited from the blueprint he created with Cash Money. So when Ross publicly criticized him during the Lil Wayne lawsuit era, Birdman didn't see it as commentary. He saw betrayal. From Ross's perspective, though, it was principle. He believed artists deserved transparency. He believed contracts should be honored. And when Wayne's legal battle exposed years of financial tension, Ross felt validated. History, at least in part, approved his point when Wayne regained control of Thought Carter 5 and left Cash Money. So, who was right? That depends on what you value more. Loyalty to family, even in messy situations, or public accountability when business goes wrong. Both men built empires from nothing. Both survived decades in an industry that eats careers alive. Birdman helped shape the Southern rap takeover of the 2000s. Ross helped redefine the modern mogul artist model in the 2000s. And here's the real truth. Neither one collapsed. Neither one apologized. Neither one lost their crown. That's what makes this story different. It's not a clean ending with a winner and a loser. It's two powerful figures standing firm in their beliefs. And as long as hip-hop keeps debating loyalty versus business, this feud will never fully fade. Because sometimes the deepest rivalries aren't built on hate. They're built on disappointment.